I am bad, I am unworthy, I am not enough, I am a failure, I am helpless, I am hopeless, I am weak, I'm out of control, I am unsafe. These are all things that I've heard from people that I've worked with. People don't feel like they're validated enough to have their trauma. So when you've experienced a traumatic event, what happens is shame is like the stain that's left on your soul. They take roots, shame takes roots in your system, but it also becomes a lens that you view the world from.
Why do women often tie their self-worth so low? I think like for everybody, you have this one voice which is like this bad inner demon.
Don't go, don't put this out there, don't tag this, don't try that. Remember when you were 6 and you tried that thing and no one liked it? Do you remember when people laughed at you? And it almost like throws everything at you to remind you of like times that you failed.
How do you overcome that voice?
So the way to counter it or to work with it is listen, achieve your goals, reach for the stars, like be a boss, claim your dreams, do your purpose, but don't be too much. There is this huge inner fear, I think, with women that we don't want to be seen as being too much, and yet no one has ever told us what too much is.
If you are new here, I'm Garima, the host of Popkast with Garima, and this is season 4. Oh, and a big shout out to rollercoaster.health. Rollercoaster.health is a women's healthcare company which supports you in your hormonal highs and lows and twists and turns. Thank you, rollercoaster.health. Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of Popkast with Garima. My podcast date today is Annalie Howling. She is an elite performance coach and a trauma specialist with over 20 years of experience. And today we are doing sip and paint. As you can see from my hands, we have painted. And Annalie, how has the experience been?
I have loved it, and it's been way more than sipping and painting. You're incredible. You're such an inspiration.
Oh, thank you.
No,
thank
thank
you
you.
for coming, for painting. Okay, do you want to see our arts very quickly? We have an option to either paint, do this, or there's also jewelry.
Yeah.
You wanna hop over and take a look at some of the trinkets?
Oh, well, I do this most of the time with my daughter. I do that nearly every weekend. So, yeah.
Cool, we can start. So what we do, we take the pencils now and we're gonna draft our first lines, our first kind of sketches, what we want to go for.
So we don't actually have to like think of a thing. It can just be sort of feeling shapes and just,
Exactly.
okay, perfect.
Absolutely.
Should we do it pencil cheers?
Pencil cheers. Pencil cheers. How big do the shapes need to be for that to work, really? Quite big, I'm guessing. It couldn't be too, to stick it.
That would
be
enough.
okay.
Yeah, for sure.
We're going to make the most colorful, beautiful looking MRI machine.
So they're going to put that in children's
Ever.
hospitals soon, darling. That's a very good, it's a very giving thing. Yeah, it could be my little cat. Could be a little abstract version of my cat, if he's all curled
I
up.
honestly see like very in nature inspired, but geometric, modern Picasso.
Yes.
work.
I love that.
Does this have adhesive at the back?
Yeah.
Oh, amazing.
So clever.
No mess.
Will be easy. Yeah, and you simply kind of like press it with your finger till the end.
Oh, I see, and then it's just a matter of making sure you get it the right length.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we don't cut it yet, obviously, just to make sure. Okay.
Yeah, to my lovely cat's bum,
You
whatever.
can bend, obviously,
Oh, can it?
The
You don't need to
silk.
cut the...
like this.
Ah, amazing.
And then we take scissors. We cut it at the end.
Perfect.
That's it.
Amazing.
Which actually brings me to something. One of the things that I'm most fascinated with your work is your ability to blend psychology, science, and lived human experiences, and how you weave everything together and help people to really be resilient. While we're doing something so beautiful, but I actually want to talk to you about what is trauma.
Yeah, what is trauma? So trauma, I did a big talk last night launching the book, and I think the main thing I want anyone to know is that trauma, people don't feel like they're validated enough to have their trauma. Like we think about trauma, we think about PTSD, and we think about maybe veterans in the war, right? And then something has happened to you, you think, you minimize it. You're like, well, it wasn't that bad. The amount of times I hear, but they had it so much worse. You know, that was much worse. Or you see something in the news, which obviously is hugely catastrophic. So we don't think that we deserve our own trauma. And that's shame. So when you've experienced a traumatic event, what happens is shame is like the stain that's left on your soul afterwards. And we elicit a response to trauma. So let's just say we're in here now in this lovely room, but let's just say someone came through that door and was going to attack us, right? Or they were very aggressive. Now there are 5 trauma responses. There's fight, flight, and freeze that most of us know about.
Yeah.
And there's 2 others. One is flop, which is you pass out on the spot. And the other one is fawn. And this one we're beginning to talk a bit more about, but it hadn't been widely discussed. And let's just say the person that comes in is bigger than us. We can't fight them off, no chance. That door is there, there's no other door out of here. So flight, run, isn't going to work. If we both freeze, we could be in real danger. If we flop, if we pass out, or if one of us does, that's not going to help maybe either. Something very bad could happen. So the only one left in our arsenal is fawn, which is maybe where we start saying, oh, sorry, can we help you? Are you okay? Or can we get you anything? Would you like to join us? Do you want to sit here? Or you start placating your aggressor, basically. That's the point with the trauma responses. They're designed to keep you alive. Clever, clever system. Your amygdala, your limbic system, which is the animal part of your brain, goes so quick, right? So it's going to fire out the one to keep you alive. When the trauma responses are going, your prefrontal cortex goes offline because we don't need to remember what we need to buy from the shops. We don't need to remember times and dates. We need to just stay alive. So all the blood gets rerouted around here. Your language area, Broca's area goes as well, which is why people say, I can't remember what they said, but I remember what they were wearing. Or I can't remember what they said, but I can tell you the exact pattern on the curtains. Like I could draw it right now perfectly. And that's because your brain, like I say, is routing this blood to keep you alive. And that's the thing with trauma and shame, is that shame is a felt sense. It's really, really, really hard to put into words. It's an I am. I am bad, I am unworthy, I am not enough, I am a failure, I am helpless, I am hopeless, I am weak, I'm out of control, I am unsafe. These are all things that I've heard from people that I've worked with. And then they take roots, shame takes roots in your system, but it also becomes a lens that you view the world from. And if you believe I am weak, or I am helpless, or I am bad, the kind of choices that you make from that place are really influenced by this shame that we hold within us.
A couple of things that I'm taking back. One is that no size of the trauma is big or small. Shame and self-sabotaging is a product of trauma.
Self-sabotage is more of a surface behaviour, so like the inner critic. Oh, no one, let's just say you're doing this new style of podcast, no one will want to watch that. Who's going to want to see that? You had so much success and you've had this big idea, and look at those people, and no one will ever want to watch you sticking things on with that woman in a basement.
But this is also an inner demon.
Yes, that's the inner
and your inner voice, which always is, I think, like for everybody, you have this one voice which is like this bad inner demon which inhibits you and stops you from doing what you want.
It tries. So it's trying to,
how do you overcome that voice?
So I love that. I love this. So the inner critic, as I call it, or the inner demon, it's the custodian of your comfort zone. So what it does is the minute you're about to do something new, like this maybe, or a challenge, or go out on a date if you haven't been for a while, or something like that, and then you get all the reasons not to go. Don't go, don't put this out there, don't tag this, don't try that. Remember when you were 6 and you tried that thing and no one liked it? Do you remember when people laughed at you? And it almost like throws everything at you to remind you of like times that you failed. And what it's doing, so this is a weird paradox, it's trying to hang on to you, it's trying to pull you back into the comfort zone because it wants to keep you safe. The only way it can keep you safe is to keep you in what it knows. What is that? The comfort zone. So the way to counter it or to work with it is just to remind it of times that you tried something new and it worked out okay. And I'm not talking about doing like an Iron Man or something massive, just like, do you remember that time that we went to that party and we didn't know anybody and it was a bit awkward at first, but it was okay, and you'll sort of feel it being like, yes, and you did that. And do you remember that time that we did breath work with someone that we didn't know, and we were crying and actually had a really beautiful experience, even though I was nervous first. Or do you remember the time that you went in an MRI and it was horrendous and you were really upset and you ended up turning it into something beautiful to help other people? And you'll feel it lowering. It's almost like you need to give it some evidence that we've done hard things before and we will be okay, and you'll feel it lowering. You'll feel it lowering.
Something that my therapist told me was every time you have a thought, and when it's bad, it's not a fact. It's just a thought. Yeah. And she said if you can visualize that thought as a blue cloud which is just passing by, and if you don't give it so much importance, and if you just let it float in the sky, I think that is something what you are also hinting at, that this is not the reality of me today. And also check in your physical foundation.
Totally.
So I was reading a stat which said that when a girl or a woman applies to a job, she has to qualify for 100% of the skill sets that is mentioned in a job description. And when a man applies to the same job, even if he's 60% qualified, he would do that. Why do women often tie their self-worth so low?
It's so tied into this sense of not wanting to take up too much space and not wanting to be too much. There is this huge inner fear, I think, with women that we don't want to be seen as being too much, and yet no one has ever told us what too much is. But we have this internal, I think, almost like seesaw, you know, like the kids sort of thing in the playground, like this internal balance that we're trying to level the whole time, which is, listen, achieve your goals, reach for the stars, like be a boss, claim your dreams, do your purpose, but don't be too much. And so you start like, I don't want to be invisible, I've got to do this stuff, but I don't want to take your light. I don't want to make, because then you won't like me either. If I'm too bold and too bright and too unapologetically myself, then I might be taking from you. And if I'm taking from you, you're going to turn on me and reject me. And so I better just just a bit, just turn my light down just a bit to make me more comfortable.
Is that what people pleasing is about?
I since writing my book, and I've done so much work around shame and studying shame, I'm more convinced than ever that actually with women in particular, people pleasing is a way of us not getting to the place where we need to elicit a trauma response. We're trying to avoid conflict. So if I sense that you're getting uncomfortable or annoyed with me, or I'm being too much, then I'm talking too much in this interview. If I feel that, like I'm going to suddenly like and then want to like placate or please. I'm giving an example. Or say, I don't want to be in a position where any of my trauma responses are going to be activated. So if I can placate you before we get to that place, I'm going to. If I had a horrible bosses back in the day. This is way before me too, I'm nearly 44. You know, I used to work in construction and property. The amount of times I was touched up at a bar, my bosses would say to me, you know, you've got to stay out and amuse the client. I was talking about this last night, my book launch. You know, I was like a corporate courtisan. Comments about my body, comments about my weight, comments about everything, inappropriate, appropriate, apparently things that, you know, all of this stuff being levelled at me. And I had bills to pay. And I knew that some of the things people were saying were wrong and I shouldn't be in that position, but I needed to keep that job, or I felt I did at the time. And this is, like I say, quite a different world and before social media and all these sorts of things. And, you know, I just sort of like awkwardly laughed it off. And everyone could go, why didn't you tell them to do one and get lost? And I would have lost my job. And I needed my job, or I felt I didn't have other choices in that time. So I people pleased and went, how funny that you're doing this. And inside it was awful. And I was betraying myself in a sense of, I felt really shameful and I really hated the feeling of it, but I didn't feel I had the either autonomy or power to do anything about it at that time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there's so much, just so much pain in first acknowledging that this is something which is happening to you. Mm-hmm. And then for you to really get past it is a whole journey of, I think, like it's some epiphany going on with your internal voice. We spoke about the internal demon, and I think how do you get past that is such a journey for you to unravel.
I think one of the things that, again, when I learned about your work, and something that I thought we would definitely vibe on was growing up, I've never spoken about this, and I must take the courage to speak about it now. And I'm doing it because I have you by my side. So it gives me all the way more power to do it. But growing up was difficult. I was the only girl in 7 generations of my family to study beyond high school. Wow. And I always say, like, I walked so my sisters could run, with 3 sisters, and always like from a very typical Indian household, there was always so much pressure on the fact that there was no brother, or my parents didn't have a son.
Yeah.
And as the eldest daughter, I took it upon me to be financially independent as early as I could be, which was right after my high school. I started picking up odd jobs, and I was doing content writing. I was just doing anything. Yeah, and then again, I've had 2 episodes of assault, which I remember very vividly. One of them happened to be a relative, which I don't speak about, which I've never spoken about, which I will never bring it up in my conversations other than this podcast. I know, because the minute I do, they're just going to say, why did you not say it then?
I can tell you why. Because of the fawn trauma response, and you were terrified. And because of the shame, and you just said that you were supporting your family and creating a future for your sisters, and you didn't want to slow anyone down.
But I didn't have all that rationale and logic back then, right?
Because you were in a trauma.
I was like, 6 years old, 7 years old. I
my
very
God,
vividly remember what happened, how it happened, who did it. But I think and I'm sure so many girls go through it, and we never muster the courage to talk about it.
But you also have to have this compassion for yourself, rather than. Firstly, thank you for saying that. Like, really.
No, I've never spoken about it.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that, because people are going to watch this, and I hope that's going to give other people courage to say something out loud as well, and that's huge. But I really want you to have some compassion for yourself, because you were a 6-year-old girl, fundamentally in a situation that you were unsafe, something unsafe happened to you. And then also, you've only got your 6 years of life to apply to that situation, to try and understand it, to try and work out. You're too young to really understand sex, and yet this thing is sex, it's inappropriate. You should be playing and joyful, and yet there's a predator attacking you and taking your agency. You had no agency in that moment, and then no doubt, exactly to your point, it's the first time you've ever said it, they also made you hold their shame all this time.
Yeah, technically it's theirs, right?
Completely.
It's
They
not
made
mine.
you
I
have
wasn't
it.
wrong.
Never.
Yeah.
But they made you have it. And because, firstly, the trauma response, probably a bit freeze at that time, and then don't tell anyone, and all of this, and then culturally as well, you would be shameful, and the shame of the family and everything else, and what might happen. And so you internalize it, and you would have had a voice of shame, and maybe I am weak, or something like that, because this thing happened to you.
And when you have an experience like that so young, it changes your definition of intimacy. It changes your definition of your own body and acceptance. And I think in so many ways, my partner had to really work his way in terms of making me feel safe and comfortable. And and very recently I told my mom that this is something that happened, and my mom was shattered. She was like, why did you not tell me about this? I didn't understand what was happening.
You didn't have the language at 6.
Yeah, but for years I took it upon me, and I thought that maybe I was wrong. Only until I was aware enough to actually understand.
There's a cure for shame, and the cure for shame is self-compassion, which is amazing. But it's actually really hard to be compassionate for ourselves.
I think I'm more self-critical than self-compassion.
Of course. So, great news, everyone. There is a cure for shame. Slightly tricky. It's self-compassion. So where I can tell you something, and you can feel so empathetic for me and want to help me, and you can hold all of the space, just like I am listening to you right now. Everyone watching will be. But inside you, there's still a part of you that's like, oh, why didn't I say anything? Or why didn't I push them off? Or there could be a million, or maybe it was because I'd done a certain thing earlier that day. Or if there's any of that lingering, that's that shame. And we need to sort of get you to a place where you can fill up that space of shame with complete self-compassion, because you never deserved any of that.
Yeah, amazing. Should we get back?
Sure. What day is it?
Yeah, I really think that you'd just be. Just sort of blob and stroke.
Yeah.
Oh, nice. Thank you. Actually, yeah, I hadn't really thought about that, but it's...
As I was saying, that we think trauma is something that it happens to others. It has to be something dramatic, something obvious, easy to label. But I think you will not even realize that just saying yes to things is a trauma response.
Totally, or you're trying...
Taking up space and feeling guilty for taking that space is a trauma response.
I just want, I mean, that's what I wanted to do with the book, was just create a space for... So my book is not a how-to. I refused to write a how-to. But what I wanted to do, a bit like what you and I believe, have done today in sharing stories, particularly yourself, is to just make someone else go, oh my God, that's me. And I've got client stories in my book. I've got client stories of sexual assault. I've got client stories of disordered eating. I've got client stories of so many different things that have happened. You know, my own therapist is in my book. I used to self-harm, and a therapist self-harming, imagine the shame. You know, you couldn't not harm yourself even though you're a therapist. Who are you to give advice? That kind of shame. So my own therapist is in my book because I want people to see that there's no shame in getting help. You know, if someone is thinking about getting help but they're worried about what a therapist might think of them, I want them to be able to read those words from my therapist and have the courage to tell someone to go and get some help if they may need it.
I mean, 2 years ago, unfortunately, I was diagnosed with brain tumor. Wow. And after my surgery, I think I've just become, I wouldn't say another person, but I think I've definitely become way kinder.
To you as well as other people?
I don't know about myself. I'm still on that journey. Definitely not as close as I'd like to be. But to other people, for sure.
Oh, wow.
I wouldn't have that level of empathy otherwise.
Really got to give yourself some big grace in this moment.
But I honestly don't know, it's been, I was very brave when my diagnosis came out, when my surgery happened. I was very, very okay, and I was very fine. I think I handled it very maturely, if I may say so. But nobody prepared me for what's next, and that I have to live with this forever and ever and ever.
Do you mind me asking you how you feel looking at your paintings?
That's a good question, Thomas.
It's a great question, Thomas. I think I'm pleasantly surprised, is what I would say, because I don't consider myself to be very creative, and I've written a book and stuff, but I wouldn't ever say I'm not very good at drawing or art, and actually I'm pleasantly surprised.
What do I feel? So this is, so I had an MRI this morning, I think my 6th or the 7th MRI, and it's still very, very scary. I feel like I'm just going to be trapped inside it, and I always just try to count this one chant that I have, and I thought it would be an interesting take to make this fun take on what could an MRI perhaps look like, and this is very celestial but very unicorn land. Yeah, so this is my take on my MRI this morning. And a big shout out to Christina. Thank you so much, Christina. We are at the Art Hotel at Battersea Power Station. This is such a beautiful aesthetic room. They do so many things. You can do art, paint and sip, jewelry. You can make jewelry. You can do pottery.
Yeah.
And
Loads of things.
yeah, she's amazing. She's really guided us through very, very amazingly throughout the whole procedure. So thank you, Christina.
You're very welcome. I look forward to see you back again, and you did a great job, and I think it's very meaningful painting you've done, so very well done.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.